When I sit in a movie theater, and the first time you appear on the screen in Yentl, the audience applauds.
Really?
Yes, really. I didn't come all this way to lie to you. And at the end of the movie, when it says directed by Barbra Streisand, people start to applaud.
Isn't that nice?
Yes, it is.
The projectionist told me that at the village theater.
Oh, you knew this already?
Well, he told me, because he said, you've got to come here and listen to the applause at the end, because I snuck in one night, but I always escape before the end, you know? And he told me, just, well, come up in the box and listen to this, because it's quite exciting, you know? And I just love that. I feel so good about people. I feel so good about the audience who are supporting this film, you know? It's like, when I was trying to sell this to a studio, any studio, all studios, before UA said they would do it, I mean, I always thought, in my naive way, that why wouldn't everyone love this story? I found this story so charming, such a possibility for entertainment, you know. I just thought everyone would love to see it, you know, and I couldn't understand why people were saying, nobody's going to want to see a story about a girl called Yentl, much less. What's a Yentl, you know? A girl who wants to pursue an education and therefore blah, 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 blah. But of course, that's only the background of a story that's about love, a story that's about the love of learning, a story that's about the love between parent and child, a man and a woman, two women, two men, friends. And as I say, it's ultimately about the love for oneself. I mean, a positive, healthy love for oneself. Self-acceptance, you know, for your total being. So I was scared. Boy, I was really scared, you know. The first day this movie opened, I went to the theater and just made sure the sound was right and the picture was right, and then I went to the nearest candy store and bought all the candy I could find and all the cookies I could find and a ham and cheese croissant and everything fattening, you know.
No ice cream?
Stuffed my face, no. You know, just trying to fill that fear of that nobody would show up. Maybe they were all right and they never should have made this movie. It's a terrible responsibility to have, when a studio gives you $14.5 million to make a movie, I feel very financially responsible, which is, I think, some of the studio's fears, you know, that a woman couldn't be financially responsible. And I found that quite exciting, you know, in being able to control the money as well as the artistic integrity of the film, because they go hand in hand. Art is disciplined. Art has boundaries. Art has limits. You know, you have to create the scene, but you have X amount of dollars to do it, and you have X amount of time. That's life. Life is compromise. Life is imperfection, you know. So my so-called perfectionism is quite realistic, you know, about the imperfection in perfection. And one wouldn't want everything, you know, perfect, because it's too sterile, it's too inhuman. It's the striving for perfection that interests me.
This film is about human freedom, male and female. And what you end up with in a discussion that involves men and women after seeing Yentl is, why is the term daddy's little girl a positive and the term mama's boy a negative? Why, in your opinion?
Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. That is very true, isn't it? I mean, daddy's little girl is obedient. Daddy's little girl is sweet, compliant. And a mama's boy, yes, would imply a sissy. It's a terribly, terribly unfair social conventions. I don't like them.
There's so much in Yentl, and the sexual ambiguity is such an issue. And when you sit down with thinking, caring men and women, when I think of Yentl, Anshel, sitting at the table, and when she begins, she begins to sing, no wonder. The song moves on so many levels that at the end of it, we're already confused. Who is attracted, repelled, and afraid here? Yentl, Anshel, Hadass, Abigor? And I think it begins right off the top. That's a compliment to you and Jack Rosenthal. There's no time wasted.
I'm glad you got all that subtext out of it. That's good, because it's interesting how people perceive something. You know, they perceive a film by what they know, what they experience. You know, you could have somebody look at a film and say the film has no subtext because the person has no subtext, in a sense, you know. We see what we want to see. We see a reflection of who we are. So when you see all these things in the film, then that means to me that you're a very complex, multi-leveled individual.
Don't we also hear what we can afford to deal with hearing?
You mean what we can accept, what we can...
Yeah, what we're prepared at that point in our lives to deal with. You hear a song and you say, isn't that pretty? Or you hear a song and you say, the lyrics just changed in the middle of that song. She's not upset anymore. She's fascinated. She's not repelled anymore. She's enjoying it.
Well, the song No Wonder was meant to, I think Time magazine said it very well in a sense. It was like a series of commentaries on the evolution of womanhood, I mean, and her perception of femininity.
Ryan Linehan on location with Barbra Streisand. There was so much media that Barbra Streisand was a born-again Jew. And you said, I am not. I am a Jew. I have always been a Jew. I feel that I'm a good person. The Jewish tradition teaches you to be a good person. That's what it's all based on. And I
see, this is why I don't, you know, this is why I don't like the press very much. Labels, you know. I think they insult the intelligence of people. It's like, you know, the fact that I did research for Yentl, that I spent 3 years learning so I could be prepared to make this movie, that has to get a label, a born-again Jew, because a magazine wants to do an article about born-again people, born-again Christians, and they figured I'd sell more magazines, so they put me on the cover and labeled me a born-again Jew. And this is what I resent, because even in Time magazine, which is he even mentions born-again Jew. And it's some woman wanted to do an article, never talked to me and put quotes around words that she supposedly says comes from my mouth. Barbra thinks this, Barbra says this. And you're absolutely misrepresented. Things taken out of context, you know, things I said 10 years ago in an article, misrepresented and so forth. No sense of growth, no sense of change. And I mean, I just think the public should be aware of things like that. To just don't believe everything you read.
Barbra, before you began principal photography on Yentl, one of the extraordinary things you did, at the encouragement of your brother, Sheldon, he had been to a medium, or a parapsychologist, or whatever term one wants to use, and you went and you communicated, you believed, with your father. You got a message. The message encouraged you to make the movie. Since the completion of the film, have you gone back to the medium to find out your father's reaction to the film?
No, no. I don't believe really in tampering with that outer world, shall we say. It was something I needed to do at that time because I just never felt my father's spirit. I never felt him. I never felt I had a father. I never had a picture with my father. So it was something that I just had to do. And that day I had gone to the cemetery to visit my father's grave, which I had never done. And not until I got home and had my brother took a picture of me with my father's tombstone. That's the only picture I have with my father. Did we discover that the tombstone next to my father had a name written on it, and the name was Anshel, which is the character in Singer's story. And that was, very motivating for me, because it's too coincidental. Did you know that story?
No.
Yeah. And something else too, it's on my father's tombstone, which says, beloved teacher and scholar, and there's a Phi Beta Kappa key. And on the top it says, because it uses Hebrew names, my father's name was Emmanuel, which is Mendel in Hebrew, son of Yitzchak, which is Isaac, his father. And then later on, when I showed Mandy Patinkin this picture of me with my father, he said to me that his name in Hebrew was Mendel, and he had just had a son named Isaac. So, somebody's up there.
We talk so much about your father. You have a brother, a mother, and a sister. Is your mother so expansive a woman that she can take in what this film means to you and share it with you?
I think she can now, yeah. At first she was very skeptical. She was like the typical mother who was crying on the phone saying, you can't make a movie in Czechoslovakia, there's a war in Poland, and they haven't got fresh vegetables there, and it's so far away from home, and you know, how could you go away like this? And so she really didn't want me to go. She was scared. But she's told me, you know, recently too, that my grandfather was a cantor in Russia. And my mother has a beautiful voice. So she always wants me to remind everybody I got a lot from her too.
Sure, was your mother, I'm mixing up titles now, but I was thinking how ironic that Yentl is being distributed by MGM-UA, and your description of your mother taking you to that audition at MGM, and you remembered the dress you were wearing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember what you sang?
Yeah.
What was
Have
it?
You Heard by, you know, Joni James. I sort of copied her, you know. MGM, wasn't that funny? In a glass booth, too. And the man just said, thank you. And that was it. It's all ironic. I mean, there's some thread here somewhere, you know. Some path of destiny, somehow. Even though I believe, and the line is in Yentl, after I saw a rabbi talk at a synagogue in New York, where he was talking about Holocaust victims, and he was talking about why the Jews went to their death so silently, why they accepted God's will. You know, well, if God's will is for us to die, then we have to accept that, rather than fighting back, you know, and say, I'm angry at God, I disagree with God, I will not accept His will and go to my death, you know. And he said that you cannot accept fate. You know, there is no such thing as fate. We make our own fate, which is more the individual's responsibility for himself than relying on, well, God's will. God will take care of me. It's that old cliche, God helps those who help themselves, you know. And I really, that was a kind of profound, that had a profound impact on me, too, you know, in terms of, if I sit around and wait for something to be handed to me, you know, then I'll be this little old lady saying, you know, I should have made Yentl. And that's when I said, no, I'm going to make it. And, you know, if it's successful, that's wonderful. If it's a failure, that's also okay, because the reward for me was in the process, was in the search, was in the work. The joy is in the work for me. That's what a lot of people don't realize, in a sense. I am not a star. You know, I don't like to be considered a star. I'm embarrassed by that aura. I'm a hard worker, you know. And that's what I love, that's what I believe in, and that's what I'd like to be respected for.
You are.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed being with you.
Me too.
I hope it's the first of several encounters.
Who knows?
The shadow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.